Hey folks, JR. Back for another episode of Echoes of Shannon Street Case File. It's going to be episode 90, Self-Defense. I'm going to go through some more of these Use of Firearms reports. Now, I may not go over all of them in detail, but I do want to put them all on here so you can review them at your leisure. Some of them, I think there's one, I really can't read it, but we'll go over when we get to it. The writing on it's kind of faded. But anyways, we will go through these and they will be available to you. After this, we're going to get into the submissions to the FBI and TBI regarding the blood, guns, and they submitted a lot of items. But we'll get to that in one of the future episodes. They sent a lot of stuff off to be checked. All right, let's get started. All right, this is the one I had a little trouble reading. Now, I think this is going to be Lieutenant Summers. The reason I say that, going down through the form, you see that middle of the page where I've got it highlighted, incident occurred outdoors. Okay, so whoever this officer is, he was shooting outside. He was standing right-handed. And it's got here the officer involved was not wounded. And they don't have anything marked for the suspect, but Lieutenant Summers wasn't for sure if he'd actually hit the suspect going across the kitchen floor. I don't know if y'all remember that from his statement earlier on one of those episodes where we discussed that, and then the autopsy where we talked about the 38 round that was in the lower back. But anyways, I think this is Lieutenant Summers, but don't hold me to that. But I'm pretty sure it is. I'm sorry I can't read the thing. Maybe some of y'all can figure it out. You got younger eyes. Let me know what it says if you can. This Deputy Hanscom's Firearms Use Report. Now, type of incident, she's got serving warrant. I guess she didn't really know what was going on. It just sounded like a good one. Well, I guess technically that could be right. The original call that came in said the police had a warrant. What Michael Coleman thought. But as you can see here, lighting conditions, night, weather conditions clear, weapon description, shotgun with double-aught buck, outdoors, number of opponents possibly 4, number of shots fired 1. Now, if you remember, she fired the round into the house. As you can see down here at the bottom, says describe protective cover, and she was behind the van parked in the driveway. If you remember the black van parked in the neighbor's driveway. You also recall the statements. She freely admitted to cranking off a round, and Ed Village mentioned it in his statement. And this was the one officer's firearms use report where if I was still in security squad, I might have charged her. Since she fired a round into a house and you got a police officer inside, we don't know who's who, so you don't know at that particular point who's a hostage and who's a suspect. But other than that, it's all good. Police department said it was, so it must be. All right, supervisor shooting incident report. Lieutenant Summers did this one. R.B. Summers. And he's saying, let's see, where the lighting conditions such as permit a safe use of the firearm, yes. Was the background presented to the officers described? Did the background make safe discharge of the firearm possible? Well, he's got yes, kind of. Anyways, I mean, I don't blame him for him marking yes, I guess. Is the reason given by the officer for discharge of the firearm in compliance with state law? If yes, justify answer. He's got marked yes. Officer I can't really read what that says. But, he's got here's officers calling for assistance. Okay, department policy, if yes, justify answer. He's got marked yes. Officer calling for assistance with at least one officer shot. Okay, that's what it said on the one above it. So, all right. As first line supervisor, you satisfied that the officer exhausted all reasonable means prior to discharging a weapon? Yes. And additional comments. It's just an explanation of what happened to Bobby Hester and Ray Swill about them being jumped by the suspects. Doesn't really address the issue of her firing double-aught buck into a house. But anyways. All right, I think this is Dave Hubbard's. This one's kind of hard to read. It is a TAC guy, and I'm pretty sure that's Hubbard. I can't really read what all he's saying up here. I'm sure it was of interest. Dave Hubbard, he usually, he is not boring from what I hear. What I can read, though, incident occurred obviously inside one of the TAC guys. It says he's left-handed, so he's a southpaw. Did you have to reload? No. Did you count your shots? No. Did you have time to sight and aim? No. Of course, those TAC guys now, especially this bunch here, they're bad news. They were really good, so they probably didn't have to. They probably didn't need much of a reaction time to get on point and fire and not even have to think about it. He says down at the bottom of the background, if your bullet had a missed, he says the floor, so he's shooting downward, he's saying. And Lieutenant Maxey did his supervisor's shooting report. Lighting conditions, yeah, they would permit safe use of the firearm. Background presented to the officers described, yes. That's the reason given by the officer for discharge of firearm compliance with state law, yes. Obviously, yes. As we know from going over the TAC officer statements and from the ballistics crime scene did, we know Hubbard took one in the back, so I'd say he was probably justified in shooting. Justified under department policy, yes. Now, I'm sorry, I can't read exactly what Lieutenant Maxey wrote up there, but and I do apologize. And then as frontline supervisor, first line supervisor, you satisfied the officer exhausted all reasonable means prior to discharging his weapon? The answer is yes. All right, this is KK McNair here. His use of Firearms Report. About like the other ones on the TAC unit. Now, he had a shotgun, used double-aught buck, and had a flashlight. Of course, had those taped on the weapon. Number of suspects 7. Suspects armed with a handgun. And that's about it. It's going to be the same as the others. I hate to keep regurgitating that for you, but it's here if you want to look at it and see. Talking about if he had to reload, and yes, he did. Did he count his rounds? Yes, he did. Background, if his shots had missed the wall. All right, and then Lieutenant Pugh did his form as a reviewing supervisor and said yes, lighting conditions would permit safe use of the firearm. Yes to the background presented to the officer. Yes to the reason given by the officer for discharge of his firearm. I'd say they were well and truly justified. And justified departmental policy, yes. And this is Hilda Ray here, if you recall. Ray's the one that busted his hand wide open when they busted in the back door with the ram. So he basically was inside the house firing a shotgun with one hand. That's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. He's a good fellow, though. I never knew him on the job, but I met him when he was working something different after he left the department. I ran into him a few times. He's a good guy. He's got some good family members, too. Anyways, he's talking about 7 suspects, 38 special, talking about what the suspects were armed with. Did he have to reload? No. Did he count his rounds? Yes. Did you sight and aim? No. Did your weapon work properly? Yes. Even one-handed. He wasn't wounded. And talking about the protective cover of the doorway. And then he's talking about the background. If his shots would have missed, and that was the wall on the north side of the bedroom. All right, Lieutenant Maxey did raise form as a supervisor. Yes to the lighting conditions, background, yes. Reason given by the officer for discharging his firearm, yes. I can't really read exactly what Lieutenant Maxey wrote, but I mean, you could write anything you want, considering what they went through, and they're justified. And they complied with state law, complied with departmental policy. And Lieutenant Maxey satisfied the officer exhausted all reasonable means prior to discharging his weapon. And you have to remember now, folks, when you're filling out this form, because I have filled these out as a supervisor, you're putting your name to something, it's there forever. So the supervisors don't take this lightly when you start putting your name on stuff, especially on an incident like this. So don't take my sometimes cavalier attitude towards these forms. Don't misunderstand it. They're very serious, and anytime you put pen to paper now, you're locked in. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode here. If I went through some of these too quick, it's just because I didn't want to bore you with the repetition of these forms, but I did want to post them all because I want you to be able to look at them as much as you want. That's why I'm trying to put the whole case file out there, so if I don't necessarily go over something as much as you want, you can always go back and look over the entire case file, which is nice. I reckon here in a few days we'll get back together and we'll continue to dig through this follow-up investigation. I ain't figured out yet quite how we're going to go through all that stuff they submitted, because boy, they submitted a bunch of stuff to the TBI and FBI. But probably do like we're doing on these forms and some of this other paperwork. I'm going to put it out there. I may not cover every bit of it, but if there's some part that interests you, then you can go back and check it out and look at it, see what you think. I'll say one thing for the department. There's definitely some issues, but they weren't messing around when it came to trying to get answers. They had Shelby County and the state, the federal government all helping them. They didn't hold anything back in regards to the follow-up investigation. All right, folks, that's enough. I appreciate y'all. We will get back together. Till then, I'll see you down the road.